You ready? Happy New Year, everyone. It's 11:30, so I'd like to call the meeting of the Home Advisory Group to order. Thank you, everyone, for coming in today. Hello, Julie. Good to see you via Zoom. We're glad you could make it. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. We know this is the only committee meeting today, but that's why you guys all get cake. So please help yourself. Yep, you got some homemade carrot cake, and we're just happy to be here and get this very important work done. These votes are really important. So roll call, please.
Miranda Barfus. Here. Don Bastian.
Here.
Karen Briggs. Lori Chassie.
Here.
Michael Childress.
Yes.
Michael Crandall. Patty Guston.
Here.
William Hennef.
Here.
Brian Krajewski. Lynn LaPlante.
Here.
Greg Schwarzy.
Here.
Mike Todorovic.
Here.
Yena Yu.
Here. Okay, thank you so much. We do have one public comment, and it is a beautifully written thank you letter from Sanguine. So it is part of our packet, and it is online if you would like to read it. We no longer read our public comments out loud, unfortunately. So if you would like a nice pick you up for all the hard work we do, I really recommend reading it. Thank you very much to Sanguine for writing in. We appreciate your kind words, and we're happy to do this work. I move to item 4A, approval of minutes, 2024-0188, Home Advisory Group minutes, a regular meeting from Tuesday, November 7th. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes and those minutes are approved. Now, moving on to item 5A, 24-0189, recommendation for approval of a third modification to a Home Investment Partnerships Act agreement with DuPage Habitat for Humanity Incorporated, project number HM 9-3, clarifying the recapture requirements as well as home affordability period for home ownership assistance. We've had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Can I just give
Yes,
some
of
background
course,
on it?
Mary,
Sure.
please.
So I will as a note to start, Julie is zooming in because she doesn't feel well today. I'm going to do my best to cover everything. I will only call on her if needed. So but Julie, jump in if I screw something up. So so this is, as it says, it's a modification to our agreement with Habitat for Humanity for a project we did. I think the actual construction started in 2011. So under the home program, home buyer assistance programs have to either have a recapture or a resale component to them. Recapture meaning the funds get returned to us. Resale meaning there's a restriction on the property that it could be only sold to another income eligible home buyer. So what we discovered is that the current agreement we have sort of has both recapture and resale included and has created some confusion when properties have been transferred. And so what we are doing is clarifying that this is a recapture requirement. That's so that the funds have to come back to us if the property is sold within the affordability period of 15 years. After 15 years, it would be forgiven. So this is basically a cleanup. We've had some challenges with a few of the properties as they've been transferred to new owners, and so that's the modification that we're requesting.
Okay. Are there any questions about that? No? Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 5B, 24-190, recommendation for approval of a conditional commitment of Home Investment Partnerships Act funds with DuPage PADS, project number HM 21-2B, tenant-based rental assistance, in the amount of $100,000 under FY 2021 with an additional $100,000 in FY 2024 funds contingent upon approval by DuPage County Board and the Department of Housing and Urban Development of the 2024 action plan element of the 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan, as well as receipt of the fiscal year 2024 home allocation. Thank you. We've had a motion and a second. Would you like to shoot a question? Sure, Ina.
Thank you, Chair. My quick question is, considering it's now, we're going into program year 2024, the funds of $100,000 are for program year 2021. So I'm assuming that those funds are just held there and can be continued throughout? Is that how it
The
works?
home funds, I don't know what the expenditure period, I want to say it's 7 years.
Oh,
That you have to have it expended, and so, and the home funds have a tendency to build up a little bit more because we fund very large scale projects as well as, TBRA and other smaller scale things. And so, yeah, there's sort of we're always working with multiple program years funding.
okay, got it, thanks.
Okay, would you like to say anything?
Yeah,
more
sure.
about
So
this?
TBRA is it's actually, I think it's the only thing under the home program where you can actually require someone receiving assistance with their housing to participate in services. So typically in the home program, if it's a home assisted unit, the client has a tenant or the tenant has a lease, and the lease can't actually require them to participate in any kind of supportive services. Under TBRA, it is allowed. And so the TBRA programs that we do here, one is through PADS and one is through Catholic Charities. What TBRA does is it provides rental assistance with a case management component. The tenant is required to participate in the case management component, and the case management component has the goal of creating sort of long-term sustainability for the individual household. In some cases, they're working on education and vocational goals. In other cases, they're working on income supports. So often these are households where someone has a significant disability that's a barrier to employment. Could be physical disability, could be behavioral health issues. And so those agencies are working with that person to identify employment where possible, and where not possible, they're looking for things like Social Security, other benefits that can help that household be stably housed for the long term.
Yes. Any questions on this? Okay, we have a motion and a second already on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to 5C, 24-191, recommendation for approval of a newly created Build America, Buy America policy. And Mary, would you like to speak on this?
Sure. This is a new federal policy that's applied to, I think it's part of the infrastructure bill that passed back in 2021. It requires projects that are funded with CDBG home, the kinds of funds that we manage. I'm assuming it also applies to Department of Transportation, other federal funds that are used for capital projects, but it requires that iron, steel, manufactured products and construction materials be produced in the United States. So the way our CDBG home and CDBG programs typically work is we work with a sub-grantee. So then that sub-grantee goes out for bid on the work. We oversee the bid manual, the bid specifications, to ensure that all of the requirements that come with our programs are included in the bid specs. So we'll just need to make sure that we work with our sub-grantees so their bid specs include these BABA requirements.
That was going to be my question, is how do you pronounce that? Is it like Alibaba?
I would say
Okay.
BABA.
All right, all right.
My granddaughter can do that one.
That's an interesting acronym.
Well, last week, or last month, we had VAWA, and this week we have BABA, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, okay, so Baba, that doesn't, yeah.
it's better than Bebe, right?
I think so, I
Yeah.
think, I was concerned, yeah.
Mary, one quick question too. Do we have kind of a gauge as to if the BABA policy is more expensive than the traditional, than something outside of? Who makes that decision? How is that evaluation done? Or is there even a dollar evaluation on it?
I don't think, and Julie might have to jump in on this, I don't think there's a requirement that they bid with American products and non-American products. And so I don't think we would have the opportunity to know what the differentiation would be. I'm sure that there are industry folks out there who are doing that kind of analysis. That's not something that would be required as part of our analysis. However, I will say that if we had a project that requested funds prior to this policy taking place, and now it's more expensive, and they would have to come back to us and indicate, you know, we thought it was gonna be X, now it's gonna be Y because the material cost has gone up. That being said, construction material costs have gone up significantly over the last couple of years. So how much of it would be because they're using American-made products versus sort of the general inflation of materials?
Right,
That would
and
be
I'm all
difficult
in
to
on
gauge.
the American products. My only concern
Yeah.
is we talk about affordability and lack of housing, but yet if this costs more, how is that's gonna reduce the amount of affordable and it'll raise prices for everybody. So just something to bear in mind or kind of keep an eye on, I guess.
Right.
Or maybe it'll come in less.
There you go. Yeah,
That
that's
would be great.
I can, Mary, if it's okay, I can add a little bit more information on that. The cost, there's a waiver that HUD is currently allowing where if the overall cost is increased by 25% or more, excuse me, then you could request a waiver from the federal government indicating that applying BABA would be prohibitive. That is something that's available if that comes up. We did do outreach to our municipal partners in regards to infrastructure costs related to steel and iron, because that's currently in effect now and within our written agreements, as Mary had indicated. And our municipal partners are already requiring American-made steel and iron within their projects, and they did not indicate a concern with cost. So just a little bit more background on that.
Phew.
Bless you.
Thank you. I caught her gold.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Julie. Bill, did you have a question?
No, that Patty beat me to it. Very similar types of questions regarding the exemption provisions, possibilities, as well as the timeline as far as when we identify any of those things before, during, or after, if a community is putting together a grant application. But I think that this gives us at least some guidance to move forward.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
And one minor one, if I could
Sure.
just jump in, and I know this, we're gonna learn by doing, I spent some time looking at the definition of what is infrastructure, of course. Water, wastewater facilities, electrical transmission facilities, sometimes we can control that, but many times electrical transmission, that's a ComEd. They're going to have their specifications. So I mentioned there might be some logistical things we may have to worry or work out through them in such process. So I think there'll probably be some learning curve here.
But yeah, as with any new project and initiative, right? Agreed. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor, and this requires a voice vote. So roll call, please.
No, voice vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I have roll call vote.
Oh, you said voice vote. So,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Roll call vote is what I meant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Michael Childress,
Yes.
Yina Yu,
Aye.
Miranda Barfus,
Aye.
Don Bastian.
Aye.
Lori Chassie,
Aye.
Betty Guston,
Aye.
William Hennef,
Aye.
Lynn LaPlante,
Aye.
Greg Schwarzy.
Aye.
Mike Todorovic.
Aye.
Wonderful, that passes. Thank you. Moving on to our final item on the agenda, 5D. Mary's going to give an overview of this. So if you could hold your questions and then for her presentation, I have a feeling you might either have them answered or new ones sparked. Item 24-192, recommendation for approval of FY 2024 Community Development Block Grant, Emergency Solutions Grant, and Home Investment Partnerships Act. Application funding recommendations. We have a motion. Can I have a second? Thank you very much. And Mary, take it
Okay.
away.
Thank you. So what I'm gonna go through today is sort of a kind of a higher level overview. There's an enormous amount of information in the packet. So I just sort of wanted to kind of walk through exactly what we're doing with which funds. So can you go to the next slide, please? So the first thing to remember is that we are working off of our FY or our program year 2024 estimated funding. As you probably all know, Congress is still operating on a continuing resolution. I think the HUD, the CR that oversees the HUD funds is, I think that's the first one that expires in January. And so we really don't know what our 2024 funding will be. So when we're in situations like this, which unfortunately is more often than not, we have to work off the estimates and then once Congress actually passes a budget, and then once HUD tells us what our actual allocation amounts are, then we typically have to do some tweaking around the edges. Hopefully, it won't be too much different than 2023, but it's kind of anybody's guess what domestic discretionary funding will come in at for 24. So the other thing to note here is this is our final year of our 5-year consolidated plan that covered the years 2020 to 2024. So this coming year during 2024, we'll be doing a huge amount of community outreach and planning to come up with the priorities for our funding for 2025 through 2029. Next slide, please. So first up is neighborhood investment projects. So we did, for this 5-year consolidated plan, we did a round of applications in 2019 that we worked through for the first 2 years of our program year. And then we did an additional call for applications in 2021 to cover the final 3 years of this consolidated plan. We received 19 applications. We funded 4 for each year in 2022 and 2023. One of the projects that remained was for the village of Addison. They received funding through the community project funding. Those are those projects that members of Congress can identify for direct allocations, federal allocations. And so that project got removed. Two of the 19 were ineligible, and then there are 8 projects that still remain from that 2021 round of applications. I apologize, that font is a little bit, it's very small for me sitting all the way back here. Luckily, I have it printed. So the recommendations, so we have a very specific scoring methodology. And so the 8 projects that remain from that round of applications, we took the 4 highest scoring. Those are for Bensonville, Glendale Heights, Addison, and West Chicago. All 4 of those are recommended. So we have a $600,000 cap in funding requests, and so those 4 are recommended for funding. You can go to the next slide. And then the 4 remaining are what we call the B-list projects. So B-list projects, the advantage of putting them on a B list is they go through the same process in terms of public notification of this is our intent. And then what we can do very simply, if a project falls through or a project comes in under budget, or if somehow our funding far exceeded what our planning numbers are, we could just go to those B list projects and fund those. Next slide. So public facilities are projects that we do in conjunction with our nonprofit partners. So public facilities are typically program spaces or sometimes administrative spaces for nonprofit organizations. We received a number of applications in 2019. There are only 2 projects remain that are still sort of viable. Some were 2019 was a long time ago, so in some cases, the agencies may have no longer needed the facility that they had originally applied for, or we did fund some projects, and so there's 2 that remain from that 2019 round of applications. Because those applications were submitted in 2019, we went back and looked at those applications. We thought it was really important to make sure to kind of get updated information so that we could score them appropriately. So we looked at 4 things, 4 criteria. Number 1, had the cost estimate changed? Number 2, had the leveraging, meaning the percentage that the county would be providing versus the percentage that the organization would be providing, had that leveraging changed? Had the number of beneficiaries or the income levels of the beneficiaries changed? And then what's been the past performance of the applicants? Can you go to the next slide? So the two projects that remain are from Ray Graham Association and UCP Seguin. You can see that in the original score, Ray Graham was a ½ a point higher. When we looked back at when we reviewed those 4 criteria, we had a drop in Ray Graham the primary driver of that drop in score had to do with the fact that their original request was facilities improvements for 3 different properties. They had now dropped it. I think they had sold one of the properties, and so now they were only requesting funding to make improvements to 2 facilities. That significantly changed the number of beneficiaries, so the number of people who would benefit from that project. And so after the updated, I think Ray Graham's costs had gone up significantly as well. So after that adjustment, we are recommending funding for UCP Seguin. And again, a B list, putting Ray Graham Association on the B list. Next slide. CDBG Public Services. So really the primary focus of the CDBG program is for capital investments, either neighborhood improvements or public facilities. We are allowed to use 15% of the total allocation to fund public services. So these projects that we are recommending are recommending level funding from 2023. We did a round of applications in 2022 for the 2023 and 24 funding years. So we are recommending basically level funding from 2023 to 24. I think that's all I have to say about that one. Next slide. Similarly, ESG. So ESG stands for the Emergency Solutions Grant. ESG is focused on individuals who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. There is a 60% cap on how much we can use on actual emergency shelter and street outreach. So you'll see the first 3 projects are for that emergency shelter and street outreach. There's funding for homeless prevention that's managed through our department, through our Housing and Self-Sufficiency division. And then the Homeless Management Information System, we fund a portion of that system through ESG. The Homeless Management Information System is a requirement. Any organization that's receiving HUD funds for homelessness or homelessness prevention is required to participate in an HMIS system. And so we serve as the lead agency for HMIS. So we have staff who manage that system. They do all the end user training. They work with the software provider. They do all of the necessary reports for our homeless continuum of care. Next slide. And then finally, so as I was saying before, home projects take a very long time in many cases to sort of get up and running when you're talking about the development of new affordable housing. That's it's a very time consuming, very complicated process. And so what we do with our annual action plan is we specifically name the projects that we are having conversations with and believe might be ready to receive funding in 2024, but we don't actually commit specific dollars to them. But we need to make sure that they're listed in our action plan. So we're currently in conversations with 3 organizations that we've had multiple conversations with. First is Community Housing and Development, CHAD. They're a very long-term partner. They have a specific designation called a Community Housing Development Organization that makes them eligible for particular types of home funding. But so we're talking to CHAD about scattered housing rehab. Gorman and Company is a developer that I think is new to us. They're looking for funding for affordable housing for seniors and people with disabilities in Naperville. And then Maze Lake Village, again, another long-term partner, is looking at rehab of existing affordable housing for seniors at their facility in Oak Brook. I think that's the last slide. Yep, that's the last slide. So happy to entertain any questions.
And just to piggyback on what Mary was saying, what I think is really important to sort of all of us grasp is the timeline that's necessary to start these projects in order to get the funding, which is why we're having our meeting today, because today starts the public comment period Then the draft plan to the Human Services Committee goes on January 16th. On the 17th is the public hearing time. The 23rd, first reading by the county board. February 2nd, end of public comment period. And by February 13th, final approval by county board. So not only is it a long process to get these projects up and running, but the whole process that we have to do as a voting and like body, this is how we have to start. And I don't think I have to explain to anyone here how important all these works and initiatives are. This is, as we've all said, some of the most important work that we do on the county board. Serving the least among us and making sure that we are taking care of our community and all of the residents therein. So any questions about all of this? Greg?
Thank you. Mary, can you explain to me again, you have, when you were talking about the infrastructure projects, I think the first or second slide, you have an A list and a B list. So the A list, we're asking for the $600 per project, but the B list is getting nothing.
Because we don't have the funding. So,
Okay.
you know, we work off, we've got a fixed sum of money. And so typically we just take with, and we break our funds into different categories. We set aside a certain, well, we have to do 15% for public service. We have to do 20% for admin. And then the remainder, we look at infrastructure projects and public facilities. And so, and then for each of those categories, we have a specific ranking criteria. And what we do is, we fund them until the money runs out. So those first four, we have funding for, the other four, we don't. So if we would need to either have an unanticipated, some sort of unanticipated program income, you know, if someone sells a property and we still have a lien on it, or the federal 24 budget is higher than we anticipate, or something comes in, is either canceled or comes in under budget, and so we would have additional funding.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can't commit anything to those B-list projects at this time.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second, so this just requires a voice vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Do we have any other business? Seeing none, then I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll turn the page. And now we're in our next meeting. Happy New Year. It's Groundhog's Day. I would like,
There's still cake.
there's
cake for
still
this meeting,
cake.
too.
Yeah. Does anyone need a cake break? I'm not even joking. Now is the time. If you're feeling your blood sugar drop, please dig in. I would like to call the CDC Executive Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Don Bastian.
Here.
Karen Briggs. Lori Chassy.
Here.
Michael Childress.
Yes.
Michael Crandall. Patty Guston.
Here.
William Hennef.
Here.
Brian Krajewski. Lynn LaPlante.
Here.
Greg
Here.
Schwarzy. Mike Todorovic.
Here.
Dana Yu.
Here.
Thank you so much. We've already covered our public comment in our last meeting. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Elizabeth Bredfeld. She is a freshman from Glenbard West who is very interested in public service and political science. And so she is taking her morning on a day where she could be sleeping in, day off from school, and she's joining us. So thank you so much for being here, Elizabeth. Let's move to item number 4, approval of minutes. I move to approve the item
Second.
23-2138 CDC Executive Committee regular meeting from Tuesday, June 6, 2023. We have a motion. Did we have a second?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes and the minutes are approved. Moving on to item number 5A. These are basically what we just covered in the previous meeting. So we will not be explaining. If for some reason you've got a question pops up from 5 minutes ago, let me know. But item 5A 24-145, recommendation for approval of fiscal year 2024 Community Development Block Grant, Emergency Solutions Grant, and Home Investment Partnerships Act, application funding recommendations.
Second.
I just want to, just for those of you who may have forgotten, the reason that we have 2 separate agendas is that it's all the city of Naperville's fault. City of Naperville is their own CDBG entitlement community, and so they can't, we can't spend any CDBG money in the city of Naperville However, Naperville participates in our home consortium, and so we have, there's just one difference between the CDC exec and the home advisory committee. And so we end up with these sort of duplicate agenda items. Tried to figure out with the state's attorney if there was any way that we can do a twofer, but it really is, they're separate governing bodies. And so that's why we have to do it twice.
All
Yes.
representation,
Yes,
all about it.
yes. Thank you so much, District 5. Just kidding. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. This is just a voice vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. 5B, 24-163, recommendation for approval of the newly created Build America, Buy America policy. Motion and a second?
Second.
Okay, wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. New item, 5C, 24-146, recommendation to waive the requirements
So
related
moved.
to fixed rate mortgages and non-permissible balloon payments under the subordination policy, rental and public facility, and approval subordination of 2 community development block grant liens with Serenity House Foundation, known now as Advanced Resource Recovery Corporation, project CD 1907 and CD 22-7, to St. Charles Bank and Trust Company. And this requires a roll call vote, please.
Okay.
Do we get a
Michael-
motion in a second?
We got a motion and a second. Yes. Does
Michael
anyone have any
Childress?
questions?
Oh,
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Mary, does this mean that we don't anticipate, do we anticipate forgiveness of the loan, that we're not expecting the money back at any point in time because our loan is subordinated?
Well, subordination and forgiveness are two separate things. So subordination just means what lien position you're in
Right.
on the property. And so
But in general,
in general, these CDBG funds are given as a five-year mortgage. Julie, nod your head if I'm correct. So after a 5-year period, it will be forgiven. But regardless, even if this were a long-term loan, the amount of that first level mortgage, that the first lien holder position, is a very small loan on a property that's worth, I don't know, 30 times what the loan is or something like that. And so we're confident that we don't have any risk.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Michael Childress,
Yes.
Nina You,
Aye.
Don Bastian.
Aye.
Lori Chasse,
Aye.
Betty Guston,
Aye.
William Henneth,
Aye.
Lynn LaPlante,
Aye.
Greg Schwarzy.
Aye.
Mike Todorovic.
Wonderful, that passes. Thank you, everyone. Any other business? Seeing none, I move to adjourn today's meeting. Our next meeting date will be February 6th of 2024. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.
Feel better, Julie?
Yes, feel better.